So in today's video, I'm talking about how to spot someone who isn't trustworthy. And in this video, you're gonna learn some early warning signs so that you can spot it early. But if you're new, my name's Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist and I love helping people create relationships that work. So trust is really one of those foundational pieces that every single relationship needs, whether it's with a romantic partner, a family member, or a friend. And once trust is broken, it's really hard to rebuild. So what I'm gonna help you do is to spot the early warning signs so that you know whether or not somebody can truly be trusted. So the first early warning sign of someone who isn't trustworthy is that they have a history of being dishonest outside of the relationship they have with you. I had this years ago where I had a sponsor in Al-Anon and I absolutely loved them, but I noticed they weren't honest in all of their affairs. But I told myself, well, you know what? They're not like that with me, it'll be fine. Well, fast forward years later, the relationship ended for that very issue. Because here's the thing, part of what you need to realize is that if somebody is dishonest in one area of their life, they're most likely going to be dishonest with you. But that's a really important early warning sign. Any type of dishonesty or deceit that they are doing in their relationships or at their work, anything that doesn't relate to you, that's a character flaw and you need to pay close attention to that. Another early warning sign of someone who isn't honest is somebody who is narcissistic or alcoholic. Those two types of people tend to be dishonest a lot. The narcissist will be dishonest to get their way and control you, and the alcoholic and addict is going to be dishonest to protect their addiction and to get what they want. Also, another early warning sign of someone who isn't trustworthy is when you get a bad feeling. But what happens is we tend to ignore it, especially if it's a new relationship. But I don't want you to do that. I want you to file that away and not ignore it. So what should you do when you notice these early warning signs? What I want you to do is I want you to not jump to conclusions and I want you to investigate further, which means ask questions and continuously assess the relationship. Because if you don't and you ignore the early warning signs, you may get betrayed down the road, and I don't want that for you. Because here's the thing, one incident is not enough to call somebody untrustworthy. What you want to do is you want to look for the pattern. Those are the things you want to pay attention to, because if you start to see a pattern where they're being dishonest in several areas of their life, even if it's the little things, that is going to be a major red flag for you to pay attention to. Now, if you're struggling with someone that you think is untrustworthy, say me too in the comments. This video is going to help. So how do we know when someone is absolutely trustworthy? Well, the truth is we don't. There are people who can fool us, like narcissists, alcoholics, people who are super charming, can tell a really compelling story about themselves and their life. But here's your insurance policy. I want you to develop self-trust and look out for those red flags. Don't ignore them. You can even write a list in your phone of potential red flag situations over time that you're tracking, because that's going to be the best way you can protect yourself, is by staying awake and making sure you're continuing to assess that relationship. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the 8 signs of someone who isn't trustworthy. The first one is, I've already talked about, they have a history of being dishonest, not necessarily with you yet, but because it isn't with you, you may dismiss it, and I don't want you to do that. The second sign that someone isn't trustworthy is that their words and behaviors don't match. They talk a good game, but they don't follow through. They make a lot of broken promises. They say they're going to show up and they don't, or they always have a good story to justify their actions. Another red flag for somebody who is not trustworthy is that they're going to avoid being accountable or taking responsibility for their own behavior at all costs. In fact, they're probably going to turn it around and blame you for it. And they're going to actually convince you that you're the problem so that they don't have to look at their own behavior. This also goes along with gaslighting. They're going to actually make you question your own reality so that you don't question them. So another important sign of somebody who isn't going to be trustworthy is that they're not willing to change their behavior that has caused you pain. And this is huge. This is someone who maybe they look like they're going to be accountable and they look like they're going to go to therapy with you, but maybe after 1 or 2 sessions, they say, you know what, I did my part, I'm done. Or maybe a month after your partner cheats on you and you're really triggered by them not returning your call right away or responding, or they say something like, "You should be over this by now." Those are really important red flags of somebody who is not trustworthy, because it takes a long time to get over betrayal. And what I've found is that the people who are trustworthy are the people who are willing to go the distance and hear your pain and be patient and understand that it's going to take several months, if not years, to regain trust. And this goes along with another important warning sign of somebody who isn't trustworthy, is that they can't tolerate your feelings. So when you feel bad, when you get really upset or triggered by something in the relationship, they don't have any tolerance for that. They don't want to hear about what you need or how bad you feel, because they don't have the patience for it. And that's a really important sign, because if you're trying to build trust with somebody, you're gonna let them go through their process of pain, especially if it's been a long-standing pattern of dishonesty. That you're not gonna get over in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But somebody who isn't trustworthy is gonna wanna rush you through that process so they don't have to change anything about themselves. They basically just wanna put a Band-Aid over it. Now, the next sign that somebody isn't trustworthy is that they're not going to ever apologize or say they're sorry for their behavior. They're going to say something like, "Well, I'm sorry if I hurt you." That is not an apology. "I'm sorry for cheating." That's an apology. Not, "I'm sorry if you felt bad." It's never an apology when they say if. A true apology or making amends is about naming the behavior specifically and expressing remorse. Another aspect of this is being vague in your apology. "Oh, sorry." That's not going to cut it when there's a long history of betrayal or dishonesty in a relationship. Being off the cuff with an apology is not the same as being truly accountable. So let's talk a minute about self-trust, because this is so key when we're talking about not trusting other people. So here's a simple way to build self-trust. I want you to start cultivating your intuition. No matter what it looks like, whether it's a gut reaction, something you hear like, "Uh-oh, that's not okay," or you get a feeling in your body or muscle tension. Everybody's intuition looks a little bit different, but I want you to start cultivating whenever you get a bad feeling about something, I want you to trust it. I want you to write it down. I want you to explore it in your journal, because the more you do that, the more you'll look back and go, "Wow, I was right." Because when you don't trust yourself, you're not going to be able to build healthy relationships, because you're always going to look to that other person for their truth rather than trusting your own. And I talk about this a lot in my self-trust journal, because part of what we need to do to build self-trust is to not judge what it looks like. Whether it's a gut feeling, whether it's a voice that you hear, like a thought, like, "Uh-oh, this doesn't feel right," I want you to trust it and build off of that. And here's one thing I want you to do. I want you to write down the last time you had a gut feeling about something and you ignored it. And I want you to write down if you were right, because I guarantee if you look back on that situation, you were probably 100% right. And that's the goal in trust issues, is to trust yourself before you trust anyone else. Because when you can trust yourself, you'll know how to trust somebody else. So the next step is I want you to go watch my video on making amends, because that's an important part of this work too. Thanks so much.